This meeting is being recorded.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Housing Committee of Manhattan Community Board 11. My name is John Green. I'm the chairperson of the committee. But before we begin, we have a few ground rules that we have to go through. Next slide. There it goes. So first, no one may speak until granted the floor. Community board members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. All of you are old hands at this, you know where everything is. But if it's not working, please let Ms. Pierre know, and she will help you. Okay, next. Okay, the chat function should not be used for community board business or questions about any topics that's being discussed. This is a public meeting, so all information and all comments should be made during the meeting and not in the chat. If there's a person that you need their information, like their phone number or their email address, that's fine, but not discussing board business in the chat. Just okay. Thing is that please keep your questions and comments brief and on topic, please. Members of the public, if you have a question or a comment about the subjects on the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom and wait to be recognized. Okay, now we say that the meeting is called to order at 6:38 p.m. And if you would, Marlene, please call the roll.
Diane Collier is excused.
Right.
Roger Flores.
Here, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon Gillespie. John Green.
Here.
So thank you. Alonzo Johnson. Beverly Pabon.
Shalom, present.
Claudia Perez. Dawn Sanders.
Present.
Anne Marie Vasquez.
Present.
Candy Vives Vasquez. And Jason Wool.
Present.
Thank you. Ron. You have a quorum, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. The agenda for tonight's meeting has been distributed to members of the committee and is available on our website. So if there are no objections, the agenda will be adopted. Let's see, I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so the agenda is adopted. And also the April committee minutes have been distributed and are available on the website. If there are no objections, the April committee minutes will be adopted as well. I don't see any hands there either, so the minutes for the April meeting have been adopted. Okay. Our one announcement is on April 20th, 2023, Mayor Adams issued Emergency Executive Order 387, which extends the COVID-19 emergency declaration for 30 days through May 20th, 2023. The New York State Open Meetings Law allows community boards to have virtual meetings where there is a local state or emergency declared by the mayor. So basically, we're doing virtual meetings for this month as well. And what will happen is that if it's extended again, it'll be announced at next month's meeting. So, so basically, just stay in touch, and and you will be notified. Okay, that's it. Are there any announcements that any members of the committee may have? Okay, no. Okay, are there any announcements that anybody from the public may have? Okay. Okay. No. Okay. Well, that means we can continue from here. Are there any? Does anyone on the committee have any informational updates? Are there any members of the public that may have an informational update?
Hi, I just wanted to, I live in the district. My name is Sabrina Lamb, 1825 Madison. Should I just reverse?
You know what, Ms. Lamb, I'm sorry. Just 1 second, please. Okay, go ahead, please.
Should I reserve my question to new business?
You have an update. You have a question.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
say that again, Mr. Green. Say that again.
So you have a question, not an announcement.
That's correct.
Okay, we reserve that for new business.
Okay.
Okay. I see a hand up. Ms. McFarland?
No, I just wanted to know where you be announcing that the mayor had, Governor Hochul have gave NYCHA ERAP money.
That was not a thing that we were actually going to. I didn't even know that myself. I guess I missed that story.
Okay, I just want to notify people that NYCHA was given ERAP money. I don't know how they're going to the distribution part of it, but that just for your NYCHA residents that are on this call, they can follow up with their development and and follow up that with the news to see how they're going to distribute the distribution of how the money. I think it's for residents that already had pending applications in.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information, Ms. McFarland. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. For presentations. Okay. First, we have an informational presentation in reference to 244 East 106th Street, Share New York project, Ascendant Neighborhood Development. The New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development proposes to facilitate the construction of a new 10-story building at 242-244 East 106th Street. The proposed development will have approximately 32 affordable rooming units for formerly homeless individuals, plus 1 unit for a superintendent and space for supportive social services. Are there people from Ascended here, Marlene?
Yes, I'll just stop sharing my screen so they can go ahead and share.
Okay, Mr. Cirillo?
Hey, I'll actually be presenting on behalf of Chris Cirillo. He's the executive director. He couldn't be here tonight, but sends his regards. My name is Derek Gaskill. I'm the project director at the Neighborhood Development. I guess I'll get right into it. I'm joined tonight also by my colleague, A.L. Hugh, and Felipe Cortez from HPD. So I'm here to present on 244 East 106th Street. Some of you folks might have seen this before. We just presented at the full board meeting last week. And we also did a pipeline update at the housing committee a couple weeks back as well. So we're frequent flyers here. Next slide, please. Cool, so just to familiarize y'all with Ascendant, we were founded in 1988. We're going on our 35th anniversary. We'll actually be celebrating that on May 31st for our fundraiser. Next slide, please. So we're based in East and Central Harlem. We have just under 700 units of affordable housing scattered throughout 28 buildings, and we have just over 2,000 units in our pipeline, and that includes 7 projects. We could go to the next slide, please. So I know that this is probably small, but I've distributed this presentation to the chairs, so hopefully it'll be uploaded to the website or distributed that way. But here's just a map of our impact in East and Central Harlem. So you'll see our portfolio buildings, our pipeline projects, and all the work that we do in the neighborhood. We also do historic preservation and historic districts. Next slide, please. Cool. So our partner on 244 East 106th Street, which we also call the Share NYC building, is the Ali Fournet Center. I don't believe that they're on at this moment, but we'll be joined by Marcia from the Ali Fournet Center, hopefully by the time I get through this presentation. The Ali Fournet Center is the largest provider of LGBTQ youth homeless services in New York, maybe the United States. Next slide, please. And they provide wraparound services for homeless youth with their LGBT affirming. Next slide, please. And next slide. Cool. So this is so we got this project was certified for ULURP just last month, or on the 27th. And the reason why this plot has to go through ULURP is because it's currently a vacant lot, and we actually own the building next door. But the lot itself was never designated for development. So because of that, we have to do 2 land use actions, which is acquisition and disposition of city-owned land. Next slide, please. So the Share NYC part of this. So the Share NYC was a request for expressions of interest, or RFEI, from New York City's HPD, Housing Development. And it was issued in, or it came out of the de Blasio Housing 2.0 plan, which established the need for new housing typologies and the need for a smaller household size. So in 2018, HPD issued the Share NYC RFEI, which explored looking at different housing models, sort of an update to SROs and shared living that was really popular at the time with market rate units, things like We Live and Common, and all these things were popping up. So it was looking at doing affordable housing for that. And we were designated along with 2 other projects to explore this request for expressions of interest. Next slide, please. So to update you all on where we're at with this and why we're coming here today. So we're certified for ULURP, and we hope to complete the ULURP by fall of 2023, which means we'll be applying for funding in spring of 2024, and hopefully get to project closing and construction by fall 2024. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of the project. It's going to be a 10-story new construction building. And it'll consist of, the first floor will be mechanical space because we're in the flood zone, along with a lobby and a community room. The second floor will be offices and a 1-bedroom for a live-in manager. And then on top of that, so 3 through 10 will be 4 duplex units with 8 rooming units in each duplex. These words are particular to shared housing. So the rooming units are the bedrooms, and the duplexes are what I'll be referring to as units. This is going to be 100% affordable supportive housing. Next slide, please, and we'll get into sort of the housing typography. It'll make more sense as we look at it. So here's the site. It's on 106th Street, almost at 2nd Avenue. Next slide, please. And this is currently how the site looks. It's a vacant lot. We own the building to the right, the one that my colleague's showing with the mouse right now. So it's currently a vacant lot. The folks that live at the building that's currently on the site don't have access to the lot, and it's never been occupied. It can't be accessed by the public, so we own it, but we can't use it for anything. So we're developing on it. Next slide, please. So this is looking at the shared housing concept. So before the request for expressions of interest came out, we were looking at different ways to develop the site. It's a really tiny site. It's 27 feet wide by 100 feet back. So it's a really tiny site. And we were looking at doing 1 bedrooms or looking at these micro units, which require kitchen and bathroom in each unit, but just wasn't really working out. So when the request for expressions of interest came out, it seemed like the perfect fit for this site. So on the right-hand side, it's looking at the shared housing unit, and it's 8 bedrooms per unit. So there's 3 in the backside and 1 in the front. It'll have double wide living spaces, living rooms, big kitchen, study areas, and 4 bathrooms per duplex. So 4 bathrooms per unit. So assumingly 2 folks per bathroom. Next slide, please. This is pretty tiny. It'll be easier if you look at the presentation if it's circulated after this, but this shows the cellar and the ground floor level. We're also going to have a backyard that goes behind the existing building, and that'll be used for the folks in the new building. Next slide, please. And again, this is the typical duplex unit. So you see the workstations, the living room, and the kitchen here. Next slide, please. Cool, and this is just kind of chopping it up, so giving you sort of the side view of where all the floors are. You're also seeing this that we are in the floodplain, so we have to adjust for that, which means that the first floor is elevated a little bit. Next slide, please. Cool, this is just going through some rendering. So this will be the ground floor lobby. It'll have a desk for security. Due to the funding sources, we're gonna have 24-hour security on site. Next slide, please. Just another view of the lobby. Next slide. This will be the multi-purpose room or community room where folks can have, they can do meetings for all the residents or use it for other programming. Next slide, please. This will be the 2nd floor lobby. This is where the Ali Fournier Center will have offices. Next slide, please. So this is where we kind of get into the duplex unit. So this is, you can see the stairs that go up to the 2nd floor of the duplex and the really large living room here. Next slide. Another view of the living room, so facing towards 106th Street. Next slide, please. This is the 2nd floor of the typical duplex unit. You can see that there's a study area there, and then heading towards the back is where the rooming units will be. Next slide, please. Double wide kitchen to accommodate the 8 folks that'll be living there, plus more. That's a really large table. Next slide, please. Another view of the kitchen. Next slide. And this is the typical rooming unit. Each individual rooming unit, each resident will have their own lease. They'll have their own door, their own space. So they won't be sharing their rooming unit with anyone else. Next slide, please. And a view of the rear yard. We're working with Terrain, is doing our landscape design. This will be accessible only to the residents of the new development. Next slide. Oh, and this is part of our public art initiative. It's called Art Ascendant, which is spearheaded by my colleague A.L. Hugh. This is the actual current view of the lot. We worked with the Ali Fournier Center and Groundswell, which is a nonprofit that does murals, to co-create this piece of art called Transition Goals. And we put that on the fence to sort of block the view of the vacant lot because it's on 106th Street, and it gets lots of debris and garbage kind of goes on the lawn. It doesn't look too great. So we put this up. I'm really proud of it. I painted a couple of the brush strokes there. I'm not going to take credit for the art itself. But it was a really great experience to work with the youth from the LA Forney Center, Groundswell, and come up with this really amazing piece of art. Next slide. Cool, and I believe that's it. So this is just a rendering of what the building will look like around sunset, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much for the. Are there any questions from the committee? Beverly, as we always say, keep reviewing on topic.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Derek, for the presentation. I have some quick questions. I probably asked these questions in the past because, like you said, you've been here back and forth for a while. In regards to the 32 units, okay, I'm looking at the wrong questions. Okay, will these apartments be under rent stabilization?
Felipe, do you want to take this, or I can take it?
Sure. Good afternoon, friends of CB11. Again, my name is Felipe Cortez, and I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Planning and Pre-Development at HPD, and currently also playing the role as Director of the Manhattan Planning Team. Beverly, to answer your question, our units are subject to a regulatory, sorry for the background noise, by the way. Our units are subject to a regulatory agreement that said the affordability period.
She's here.
Oh. Hello? Okay, I'll continue. And depending on the program, the affordability period could go sometimes from 60 to 99 years. For this particular project, I believe the initial regulatory period will be for 60 years, and then could be renewed for another 60 years. I believe these units are not said to be permanently affordable, but the way that we guarantee the affordability is through this regulatory period. Most of our developments usually come back to us for an extension of the regulatory period. So we anticipate, and Ascendant and Ali Forney are two nonprofits that are committed to long-term affordability. So we anticipate that they will come back later to renew the affordability period. I hope that helps answer your question.
Billy? I think we lost her. Okay. Dawn?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was on mute. I was asking that didn't actually answer the question, because you stated that it was stated that the each unit would get their own leases. So what type of leases would they be given? Will they be given a month-to-month lease? Will they be, is it under rent stabilization, especially with the, that's coming up now, so in everybody's mind about how much is going to raise up, and, and I'm concerned about the affordability.
Gotcha.
And
I am so sorry, Beverly. I misunderstood your question. Yes, the units will be subject to specific rents that are going to be set according to the affordability of each unit. I believe what we mentioned during the full board meeting is that all units will be affordable to individuals or households that are going to be making from 0 to 60% of MI, which 60% of MI currently is around like $54,000, $55,000, if I'm not mistaken. So the rents will be for people making those incomes. The exact numbers, maybe we can get back to you with the exact numbers. I don't have them on the top of my head, but yeah, they're going to be monthly leases.
Month to month. It is. It is going to be month to month.
I believe that's how it works. And yes, they're going to be affordable according to the MIs that they're going to be underwritten for.
And to add to the month to month, we're using the supportive housing loan program in 1515 funding. So this is a supportive housing project. So we're not going to kick folks out for not being able to pay. We're willing to work with the residents and to make this, their home for as long as they need to.
Right, I appreciate that, because we do need long-term for housing for people of lower 60% AMI as it is, but it's still being month to month. I'm wondering, how do you increase their lease and how long their leases are for? And will it still stay, within affordability of the 60% AMI, which actually goes up each year? So I just want to know how would the numbers work out for the next 60 years that this program is going to be under the regulatory agreement.
That's right. So I believe that there is an option, depending on the individual or the household. I believe there is an option to get yearly leases. The increment after a year, the increment on the rents will be mandated by the AMIs that the units are going to be underwritten. According to my understanding, what I know about how the underwriting works is that if you get into a contract for a unit, the increase on the rent for the next year is going to be dictated for the increase for that particular unit that is set on a specific increment for the years that is going to be part of the same MI. It's a little bit complex. I'm not very savvy with that part of the equation, but the increments on a yearly basis are going to be no more than, I believe, than 2%, which is dictated by the program. Beverly, I can try to get more details and try to get back to maybe the district manager in writing with how specifically the increments will be generated, if that is helpful for you guys.
Yeah, I think it would be, because we are still talking about affordability for the long term. And my last two questions was, you showed a layout regarding what HPD was trying to do with the apartments, if they would be single units, studios and stuff. You had the same amount of numbers of units, 32 to 34 units for those designs. And they were full, studios, or one bedrooms or whatever. I want to know why did y'all go for the share? Is it because the share program came up and they was asking for a request for information for that? And my last question is, for these units, are these only for single occupancy? Or would these people be able to have more than at least a second person to live in those spaces? And I'll relinquish the mic so I can hear your questions. And thanks again for the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. AL, is it convenient to pull up that slide again? Yeah, so we would have been able to build this building without the Share NYC option, but they're really tiny units. There's also a lot of redundancies. So instead of building 8 kitchens for 8 people, we're building one super big kitchen for 8 people to all share. Same thing with the redundancies in restrooms. And also, given the population, working with the LA Fournier Center, they currently have a building that's located in the Village where they have, it's a 3-bedroom with 6 residents, so people sharing bedrooms. So they're already kind of doing this like shared housing through just calling them roommates. So it also really just works well with their programming and their experience with that. So it's really kind of built for the folks that have been doing this. And it also just takes care of these redundancies. So for example, you see the hallway, the stairway takes up so much room. So they have more room to move around and create like a better living experience. We also hope that this will kind of, because it's for formerly homeless youth, that this will kind of create like a sense of family, a sense of community, and connect folks more than if they were all separated behind doors in one bedrooms or studios.
And to complement your answer, Derek, the Sharing YC is a new initiative that I believe Derek mentioned. It started with Mayor de Blasio, and this administration wants to continue exploring and maybe incentivizing. And under that initiative, we're trying to explore how rooming units, meaning this type of housing, could actually work throughout the city. And it would be an attempt to kind of release the stress on other projects so we can maybe generate a little bit of more family-sized units by creating more single units for single individuals under the room and share housing style. So we can create that alternative. So we don't need to create as many studios and one bedrooms in the other projects. So that's the whole intention. And as mentioned, as Derek mentioned, these units are mostly dedicated to single individuals.
They're all.
And Derek, if I may add real quick, hey folks, Marcia Bernard, she, her pronouns, from the California Center. And knowing the population that we currently work with, and knowing how they went through so much family rejection, a sense of families is really needed. And most of our clients that we work with, they don't experience a community feel or a sense of family until they actually get to us and like work with the other clients that they have. Mm-hmm. So a sense of community is really needed. And that's like one of the main focus when we think about these units, because currently at our sites, we do have that communal feeling for our clients right now.
Okay, I think that is very important, the community. And since this type of housing gives them that, okay, I agree 100% with that reasoning. And thank you so very much for your answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candy?
Hi, I'm
Candy,
sorry.
if you're speaking,
yeah,
you're
can you hear
mute.
me? Yeah, Dawn had her hand up before me, so I don't know if she's still there.
I didn't see it. I saw the hand disappear. So,
okay,
the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I only have one question. Is because you brought up the 1515 funding. Can you explain that 1515 funding and what what are the benefits of that?
Sure. I'll take a crack at it, and then Marcia and Felipe, you want to add to it. The 1515 funding goes with supportive housing. So it pays for services and I believe subsidizes the rent as well. But that covers things like, attached to that funding, we also have to have requirements. So one of the requirements is 24-hour security. We also have to have social programming, social work. So the building will be staffed with social workers, and actually not too many, but more than usual, just because of the way California does their programming. Felipe and Marcia, do you want to add to that 1515 question? Also, hi, Candy.
Hi, how you doing? I'm sorry.
And also the 1515 funding, as you mentioned, it helps with the day programming. So clients could get like the entire wraparound services, and the staff that's on staff could actually like teach them independent living skills when they are ready to move out of these units to like their own place. So they get a lot of hands-on life skills training while they're with us to kind of prepare them for independent living. So the 1515 funding really helps with that.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay.
I
wasn't sure if that was because I wasn't sure if that was something that was with the other program that it had, the 2020. That's why. It was more chronically mentally ill. So I don't know. It was just going for that funding just to help also. But thank you for that. That's a good program then. Thanks.
Thanks, Kaylee. Good to hear from you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Candy. Dawn?
Thank you, Chair. I dropped off for just a moment, but I wanted to thank Candy for asking that question and also recognizing me, because I think one of the problems we have is that we end up with supportive housing programs that really don't have wraparound services. And that becomes discouraging because let's say you have a beautiful new building and people are finally living, you know, with dignity and respect and clean surroundings. And then there are people there who have unresolved issues and no one's paying attention, you know, and so it puts some of the residents in a position where they have to challenge other residents who could be doing illegal things or, you know, other things like that. And I just feel like our committee is going to have to take a much closer look at making sure that wraparound services are real wraparound services, right? And not just lip service or not just from 9 to 5 or, you know, take into account the real issues that a population is having. So I'm putting that on the record, but having known Chris Cirillo since way back in the day when I was at HPD also, I understand he knows that we have high expectations on this committee and we have high expectations in this community. But I just want to make sure you know, if you have supportive housing, you got to really make sure that the quality of life is there for everybody, you know? And so you might have like another sort of supportive housing group came to us. You might have 100 residents who love it and they get along and everything's fine. And then you have 5 residents who are threatening everybody else or they're vandalizing the spaces. And that's not good enough anymore to have supportive housing where you don't have enough services to deal with people who are kind of at the extreme of behaviors that disturb other people who are living there. So that's just something I'm starting to impress upon groups. And I think I think Candy asked good questions to show what kind of great programming, but we definitely want to make sure that the people who live there and the people who are neighboring feel, you know, like you guys are really on top of keeping this a great place for folks to live and not let it, you know, be brought down by like a few residents or, you know, that sort of thing. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We understand that our office is right on 116th and First Avenue. If we're doing anything wrong, we know that the community will come find us and let us know we're doing something wrong. So we appreciate the trust that you're giving us in doing this project. Marcia, do you want to speak to the B. Arthur building maybe and how long that's been occupied and how that's going?
Yes, so as most of you know, we are the largest LGBTQ agency in the country. And when we talk about wraparound services, we also talk about every client that comes to us, they're assigned a therapist, they're assigned a mental health specialist. Once they're in-house, they do a complete intake. Because a lot of our homeless youth, one of the things they always complain about, they don't have a voice. So we've also created a resident advisory board meeting where our clients actually attend these meetings with staff and leadership to voice their concerns, what their needs are, what can we do to better support them on a weekly basis. So we give them a voice to actually be part of AFC and not just a client that we give a bed to. A B. Arthur residence, it's 3 floors. Most of our clients, they're totally independent. Most of them go to school, they work, and we have staff like on the first floor. Staff will do walkthroughs to make sure, you know, everyone's okay. They'll do check-ins. Case management happens on site. So the case manager will come to the site weekly. They have a scheduled appointment. We provide them with everything that they need. And all we ask them to do, respect the rules of the program. If you need any assistance, let us know, and we're there to support them. And, you know, we create a home-like environment. That's just how it is with all of our sites. Again, we have staff on site 24/7. There's always trainings for staff. There's weekly trainings and there's monthly trainings. So if how to properly take care of an incident report, we'll have an outside facilitator come and do a report for that, mandated reporting, how to properly engage with clients. Because a lot of times, you know, we speak one language, the client speaks another language. We don't know where they're coming from. How to work with clients who's dealing with family rejection. The holidays is like a very tough time for most of our clients. So we always make sure there's a therapist and mental health specialist on staff to check in with clients during holidays, especially like Christmas, Thanksgiving, that type of stuff. So there's always support for our clients. In leadership, they could reach out to me, they could reach out to anyone, anytime, and we'll like respond to them. We have an open door policy, but we just try to provide like a safe home-like environment for our clients and provide staff with the training that they need.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see there's a hand raised in a member of the public, Ms. McFarland.
Yes, I just beg to differ in terms of 60% AMI for a project in this area. In terms, I mean, what happened to the low income of 30% or 40%? 60% seems pretty high for a room for rent, because this is the way I'm looking at it. Because in that apartment, they only have a room for rent that y'all are renting. So there's going to be 3 people in this one apartment, and you're not renting the apartment to them, you're renting the room. So I'm kind of confused with that. I think it was a better idea of the single occupancy when people have, I don't know the population, but it just seems like that's someone will have more privacy opposed to opposed to this kind of setting. A lot of people, in light of the high number of people that have mental illness and substance abuse, and you have them coming into this room, and I don't know who my roommates are. I don't know. For me, I'm uncomfortable with that kind of who will be my roommate, and how they clean, and how they take care, and housekeeping rules, or different things like that, opposed to if I had my single occupancy studio that I can control, and and again, for my privacy. So I don't know, it just seems like this is a room for rent kind of living, not, and then you're giving leases to these residents with 60% of the AMI, and then you're saying it's this voucher program or whatever it is, but it's for 60 years lease. What happens if somebody stays in there for 60 years? Now they're 80 years old, and where are they going to go when there's no longer no funding? So I'm just concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can address the affordability, due to the funding sources of this building in particular, it's going to be for formerly homeless youth, so youth age 16 to 24. So when we talk about the affordability, it's just to make sure that they qualify as formerly homeless, so that they qualify for this, for the program and to be in the building. I absolutely understand that this housing typography is absolutely not for everyone. But for folks that this is a proper step for them, they need to feel that community, they need to feel that home-like environment. It's a really good option, and it's a new option too. And Marcia, if you want to talk to the roommate agreements and the cleaning, maybe.
Yes. So every client that comes in with us, they sit with their roommate and staff, and they fill out a roommate agreement. They do have chores on site, because again, we're teaching them an independent living skill, because a lot of clients that come to us, they don't know how to properly do a chore. So it's something basic: take out the trash, wash the dishes, a basic chore. But they do sit with their roommate and the clients and be like, this is the time I wake up in the morning. This is the time I go to bed. If you need to listen to your music, can you, do you mind putting headphones on? And then when we think about it, like most of our clients, once they leave us and get their own apartments, most of them usually have a roommate anyway. So just trying to build that skill now, I think helps them in the long run.
What do you do? Will it be supportive? Will they get support from the social worker in terms of finding permanent housing?
Yes, they'll work with the case manager on in terms of like what their housing needs would be after they leave the program. But we're never just gonna be like, okay, your time is up, you need to go.
So
that's
this is
just
not
never gonna happen.
I'm a little concerned also in terms of where is the funding coming from in terms of how are these clients going to pay you guys this rent?
So the rent is subsidized by the 1515 funding. And then also we are Ascendant and the LA Furnace Center are both nonprofits who can fundraise. So if a client can't pay rent, it's not expected that a 16-year-old who's formerly homeless can pay rent right out of the jump. There's the opportunity for fundraising from the LA Furnace Center to subsidize that rent as well.
And Beverly, just want to clarify that the 60%, sorry for the background noise, I'm holding my baby. The 60% is the top level of the AMI that this really good target. That doesn't mean that we actually might have units at 60%. It's just to build up some flexibility on the program. Additionally, it might be that some of the tenants of this building might be coming with some vouchers. So there are going to be options here. And we don't have an exact MI distribution or income distribution for the project because that's still in the works. But again, I just want to give you a little bit of peace of mind that the 60% is the highest that this can go. That doesn't mean that we actually might have units at that level, but it's just to build that flexibility in the program.
Oh, so, but if it's, why do you not have a percentage of it? 30%, 10% of the building is going to be 30%. Another 10% is going to be 40%, and then the high.
Right.
But you should have some more data other than just saying you don't know about 60, what they will be 60%, because 60% AMI is very high. Like I said, for a 16 to 24-year-old. And so I'm just saying.
No, that's right. That's right. I completely hear you. I hear your concerns on that. The problem is that for supported housing projects, the affordability for those units are usually not even resolved until the very end, until project closing, mostly because we want to make sure how many, the pool of candidates that we might have in their situation. We will need to identify how much city subsidy will need to be put on this. How are we going to allocate any other funding sources that could help these individuals live in the building? So we definitely hear you and your concerns. And but again, the 60% of MI is just to give flexibility under the program. But that doesn't mean that all the units will be just 60, 50% of the units will be just 60. It could be that we might not even have units at 60% of MI. That's it. But we hear your concern.
Okay. And my last question is because of the 60% AMI. Now, really, technically, you're doing 120 AMI because you have 3 units in each apartment. So that's something to look at.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. What was the comment? Sorry.
My comment is that because you said there's 3 rooms, because they're not apartments, they're rooms for rent. 3 rooms in that one particular apartment. So per unit, you are looking at 120% AMI because there's 60, 60, 60.
Or you could have 30, 30, 30, or you could have 0, 0, 0, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I yield the floor.
Yes, just to pick up on what I'm hearing is that the project is from 0 to 60% of the AMI. So you will be taking people with no, from zero income, where you can have some type of subsidies to help pay for the project up to 60% of the AMI. And you will be able to take people who have vouchers or can be on public assistance and could also apply for these units. Is that what I'm hearing also?
Yes. So it's for formerly homeless youth. So they'll be referred to us through the shelter system, and they can have other funding sources attached to them as well, or funding sources that are in use that are attached to the individual.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming and thank you for providing an update. We hope to see hold the phone. Candy?
Yeah, one more question. I'm sorry. Are you going to be working together with Covenant House and in selecting some of these tenants, or how your tenant selection plan? I'm sorry if I'm gonna delay a little bit, but I just wanted to know if you're working together with other agencies that do work with formerly homeless or homeless youth, like Covenant House and the Door, places like that. And how is that how you're doing your tenant selection, or are you gonna do this through Housing Connect? That's what I would like to know. I'm sorry, that's the last question.
No need to say sorry. Marcia, do you want to take this or?
Yes, we'll be working with other nonprofit organization, Rising Ground, Covenant House, our case managers and our outreach team going to be working with everyone to ensure that all the beds will be filled by everyone who needs it and not just the Alley 40 Center clients.
I have one last question.
And sorry, I want to address the last piece of Candy's question. These units, because are part of the supported housing program, will not be, and they're going to be HRA, DHS referrals. These units will not be advertising Housing Connect.
Great.
Oh, okay, that was
right.
Sorry.
No, I just wanted to see if that's part of your tenant selection. Like if you're working, it's just like if you have a domestic violence unit, units, you're gonna work with agencies that do support and work with these tenants. So I just wanted to know, how is it that you're working with them? Can we refer people like other organizations can do? That type of stuff. That's why I'd just like to know how you're doing your tenant selection. But if you don't have the answer right now, I would still like to have that if you could just have that in place when you do present again. But that would be interesting, because then this way we will know, we know a lot of other people that are living in that type of situation. And I really want to commend Ascendant, Chris and I'm sorry, I didn't get your name again, the executive director to the Alice Forney. But that's very essential and is important. It hits home. And so, you do need to have a place for the youth that are not accepted at the moment from their parents or family members, and they do need to have a place to go. But I just want to see, how is it that you actually, anyone can come in to be able to participate and be part of having an opportunity to have a place called home for the moment and get all the services that is being afforded right now in our community, because we do have a lot of children and a lot of youth that are, want to come out, or they are out, but once they come out, the family doesn't accept. And so when you know about that, we don't have a place like that. Covenant House is one of them. And, but still, it's just but a handful. And that's only temporary, like a Band-Aid. You guys are really there to really give the nuts and bolts and get them ready, like parents, raising them, gearing them to know the life skills so they can be responsible in independent living individuals, So I just want to know how can we, community-based organizations, also having, how is it that we can refer anyone? Is that, how that will work? Because I want to make sure that we're able to not just have people come in from other areas, but our own children of our community, our own youth that are caught up in a situation, need somewhere to stay, rather than to commit suicide and stuff like that, because of course, sometimes it can lead to that. And so that we can be able to provide and say, hey, we know this is where you can go. How do you go about it? Is what I want to make sure that we in our community can be able to do that, you know? So that's the thing.
Yeah, Candy, I think you're touching a very good point. And so we know how the selection process is going to go. As I mentioned, it's going to be HRA who's going to refer like applicants through their like CAPS service and portal. In addition to that, whoever is eligible for this will need to fulfill the requirements under the NYC 1515 program dedicated for youth in this particular case, which is the age restricted for individuals between there you mentioned 16 to 25 years old. Regarding the organizations referring people to HRA, I believe that's something that organizations can do. However, I just want to be clear that, you know, HPD and HRA need to maintain some flexibility in the placements. However, we took that very seriously, and HRA does too. So sorry for the background noise again. But for those local shelter residents who are eligible and list a preference for Manhattan CB11 placements, they will be placed potentially on this unit. So it is possible. You can do some advocacy, and HRA again will try to work on those cases.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to that, Candy, thank you so much for recognizing the need for this housing, and to East Harlem for being open to this housing as well. It's absolutely needed. There's a statistic that flies around sometimes that says 60% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. So if folks are in the HRA DHS homeless system, there's a high chance that they're LGBTQ. One of the great things about working with the Ali Forney Center is that they have different levels of folks to care for. So they have a drop-in center that's located actually on 125th Street. So having this building in the neighborhood, folks knowing that the Ali Forney Center is in the neighborhood, getting acquainted with it, once they make contact with the Ali Forney Center, they can help guide them to the sources that or the help that they need in that moment. So I think having the LA Forney Center in East Harlem is going to be a great asset to some of the youth in the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, I was still, the tenant selection planners. I just want to make sure we're not left out. And when I say we, I'm talking on behalf of the community at large. I'm not on this board for me. I'm here to really support everybody. So I just want to make sure that we get our fair share. We welcome everybody, but we want to have opportunities as well.
That's right, Candy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Candy. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for providing the update. And we look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Okay, now that we're finished with that, I think we can go on to the next thing. Listen, I know some of you have to get up and go to work in the morning, so I don't want to infringe on your time any more than I have to.
Thank you so much, folks. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Okay, next, the committee discussion in reference to the New York City Rent Guidelines Board proposed rent increases for rent stabilized apartments. As some of you may know, it's been in the news for the last few days that they are the Rent Guidelines Board is considering a rent increase on 2-year leases by as much as 16%. It's that considering we're just getting out of a pandemic, that can be a difficult task for some residents who live in those apartments. But I'm going to ask Jason Wu to just do a little bit of a description of all this. Jason, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you, John. And thank you for allowing us to have the space to talk about this important issue. I think it's really important for Community Board 11 to take a position opposing big rent increases, because that will significantly harm our community and all New Yorkers. So just in terms of a little bit of background, there's about 1 million rent stabilized units in New York City, including, that includes units here in our district. For rent stabilized apartments in New York City, the rent increases are set by a board called the Rent Guidelines Board. And every year around this time, they begin a process where they vote on what the proposed 1 year and 2 year lease renewal increases are going to be. And the Rent Guidelines Board is a 9-member body that is appointed. Each of them are appointed by the mayor. In terms of some other information I wanted to share, give me 1 second. I wanted to just share some background information. Manhattan rents, the median rent is about $4,000 per month. And as John noted, some of the proposals include increases up to almost 16% for a 2-year lease. I think many people believe that is unlikely, even though it is just a crazy, outrageous number. But even increases at 8%, 6%, 4% is too much. We know the economic impact that would have on people in our community and all across New York City. I want to also note that last year, the Rent Guidelines Board allowed the largest increases in almost a decade. It was 3.25% on 1-year leases and 5% on 2-year leases. So landlords just got that last year, right? And we know that wages have not increased at 3.25% or 5% or 6 or 8 or 16%, right? Wages have stagnated, and with inflation, people are struggling to survive and pay their bills. The city also released data last year showing that nearly 40% of rent stabilized households spend more than 50% of their income on rent. People should not spend more than 30% of their gross income on housing. So that's a common benchmark. And we know obviously a lot of these issues regarding housing affordability and the housing crisis is even more severe in our district, right? We know that there's lower incomes, there's more housing insecurity, there's higher eviction rates. All of this is very, very serious. And so I think, we all probably agree that there is a huge problem. We're all deeply concerned about housing affordability. And so I'd like for the community board to take a position and craft what that would be. I would propose that we ask for a rent freeze, which is commonly what tenants' rights advocates will ask for. But also in the alternative, if there were to be increases, they should be no higher than 2 or 3%. So that would be my suggested proposal of a rent freeze, and alternatively a 0 to 2%, maybe up to 3% increase for a 1 to 2 year lease renewal. Okay, and I'm going to stop there so we can have an open discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Okay, are there any comments from members? Dawn?
So first, oops, am I here? I'm here. So first, I think wholeheartedly we should advocate for this rent freeze. And I also want to ask, because I feel like, Jason, it seems like this is like pretty insidious. And is this about landlords getting back all the money they feel they lost during the pandemic? Like what is behind this? Like what could possibly justify this large of an increase? Like I just want to know if you have a little more context. But besides that, I do think we need to advocate for a freeze immediately. And then not only a freeze, right? Because there was a moratorium, but then it seems like after that freeze is lifted, people want to go back and make all the money they feel they lost. And that's not really how it's supposed to be. People can't go back from losing their job in the pandemic and get paid for the time they were out of work. So why should landlords feel that they can get all the money that they would have lost, during this, during the time that they couldn't collect rent? So anyway, that's my question. Do you know what's the deal here?
I think some of the arguments that you're suggesting are arguments that we're hearing, that landlords have suffered all these losses and, they're having a hard time making, the significant profits that they believe that they would under this business model of renting apartments. And to your point, there are plenty of businesses that went out of business, right? During COVID pandemic, small businesses, including in our community, we see shuttered commercial spaces, right? But they don't get the same kind of sympathy and governmental intervention the way landlords do. And I also think just factually, some of that narrative is wrong. There were billions of dollars dispersed in ERAP money, right? We were talking about that earlier, that ERAP money was made available and now it's being expanded to NYCHA tenants. But landlords got ERAP money, billions of dollars. Many of the big landlords got PPP money from the federal government, right? There was articles about that, millions and millions of dollars for some of these larger developments and developers. And so, and also when you look at net operating income year after year, landlords always say that they're suffering economically, but you always see that they are still making net profits. So the question then becomes, how much profit should they be getting, right? And so, the argument that inflation and these things are eating into their profits is one economic argument. But on the other hand, for regular New Yorkers and tenants, especially in our district, they're also suffering from inflation. They're suffering from wage stagnation. And so why is it that regular everyday New Yorkers and tenants who are struggling to survive have to basically, choose between putting food on their table and paying their rent so that these landlords can get an additional 4, 6, 8, whatever, 16% increase in rent when the rents are already thousands of dollars, right? Over the past few years, it's just, all of it has compounded. And so there's very few affordable housing options left in New York City, especially in Manhattan. And so the rent stabilized housing, not only is it about protecting tenants, but it's about protecting that long-term affordability for future generations. And if we just keep increasing it 3, 4, 6, 8% every year, even if their rent stabilized, these rents will not be affordable.
That's very true, Jason. Okay. Claudia?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for all the commentary. I do believe that it should not be raised to that amount, but I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate here because I've spoken to some homeowners. Now we're initially looking at large developers, but what about the homeowners who suffered and have 9-to-5s just like the rest of us, and they might have 1 or 2 renters for their buildings? They didn't recoup money during the times that COVID and everything happened. And there's also a lot of people who have their properties paid off, but they are falling in arrears on their taxes. So even though I truly believe that, there should be a rent freeze, I beg that we look at a way that we can be inclusive where it's fair to everyone. Because like I said again, you're looking at the large developers with over 20 units and stuff like that, where yes, those are the ones that are receiving profit. But what about the in-betweeners, sort of just like the in-betweeners who are in the community with the moderate income, and they also fell upon hard times. So I would say some homeowners are at jeopardy of losing their property because they have fell back in arrears. So how do we address this in a holistic way where everybody can share what's going on and also do the protections that we have for the renters? I yield the floor back.
John, can I respond to that or?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so in terms of the example of smaller like multifamily homes where it's like a 2 or 3 family home, those are generally not rent stabilized units. Those are market rate homes, and so those kind of small landlords, they can increase the rents to whatever the market will bear, and whatever the rent guidelines board decides has no impact on those small landlords. So I just wanted to clear that up. Typically, rent stabilized units are buildings with 6 or more units built before like 1970 something, or they also include some of the housing stock, newer housing stock, where landlords have developers entered into regulatory agreements, which some of our colleagues were asking about earlier today, if that applied to the project we discussed earlier. And so some of those units could fall or could be impacted by what the rent guidelines board does with the vote and the increase. I also wanted to just address like the economic issue for smaller landlords, or just in general for landlords. So DHCR is the state housing agency that administers and enforces a lot of the rent regulation laws. And landlords do have the option of applying for a hardship to have the rents increased. It's a very specific process, and landlords have to provide documentation to show the economic hardship and feasibility issues with the current rents and profits that they're getting. And the reality is, studies have shown that it's like 1 or 2 or very, very, very few out of, like I said, 1 million rent stabilized units. It's like a couple of applications per year. So we hear these arguments, we hear this narrative out there. What about these landlords who are suffering? Well, if they're suffering, why aren't they applying for the hardship exception through DHCR? And part of what we've also heard is landlords say, well, we can't really substantiate these claims, but we're going to just put that out there because we want these higher increases, right? And so I think we need to really look at the facts versus what's actually out there and available for landlords. The other thing I would just say in terms of kind of the economics for landlords is, you know, for a lot of the building, if we're talking about our district, right, in East Harlem, if you own a building in East Harlem, we all know that that building is worth probably $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million or more, right? And so for someone to say, I'm not collecting enough in rental profits, but I'm sitting on a multi-million-dollar asset, right? You can sell that asset, right? That is a business decision that you can make and you can cash out. And so that would be my response. So it's a little bit of the like the argument that like landlords are suffering versus the actual impact that even a low increase like 2% on a $2,000 rent for, you know, a family that's struggling and they have 3 kids and they're trying to pay for books and school supplies and food and winter clothes and transportation. Like, you know, I think it's a false equivalence of economic harm when one person, like on one side, people are literally struggling to survive. On the other side, it's like, oh, well, it cuts into my profits and I'm sitting on a multi-million-dollar asset. So I just want to frame that contextually as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Beverly?
Yes, was Candy before me?
I don't think so, but you have the floor, so ask.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Jason, in regards to the, you spoke about the members of the rent guideline board. Can you tell me what the breakdown of this 9-member board is? Is it all real estate people? How is it made up? And you said it was also, they were picked by the mayor. And do they have terms? And my other thing is, when buildings come into the land use and have buildings that's going to get certain tax breaks, like either 491 or whatever, 421, or whatever type of tax breaks that they get, in order so the building's cost is not that high because you're not paying high property taxes or any property taxes. Are they also able to get these increases? Because it seems that most of the time when they talk about expenses, property taxes is like one of the biggest things that they complain about, and the city don't seem to want to do any changes to the tax laws, property tax laws regarding billion-dollar properties paying the same type of taxes of people that's, of smaller buildings within our community. So I was just wondering, with any building that's getting some type of tax break, whatever, in any form from the city, would they also be able to get these increases even though they're paying less taxes? And that's one of the reasons for the expense of running a building?
Just to answer the RGB composition question. So I believe it's a 9-member board. In theory, it's supposed to be a balanced range of perspectives. There's 2 tenant reps and I believe 2 quote unquote landlord representatives, and the rest are public members, something like that. But the reality is the board generally is stacked on the pro real estate landlord side. And I don't want to editorialize too much, but this is the Mayor Adams administration. And under the prior administration, Mayor de Blasio appointed who he appointed. Mayor Adams is appointing who he has appointed. And the reality is we want to say it's not political, but if you're appointing people with more landlord, real estate kind of sympathetic views, you're going to get a certain result. And even with 2 quote unquote tenant representatives who are great, but 2 out of 9 is not going to yield necessarily what we want for tenants. And that's why it's so important for all of us to speak up. I think a lot of people don't even know that this is happening. And part of it, I think, is structural. The rent guidelines board hearing process and all of this happens right after the state budget is resolved. So everyone is focused on the state issues, all the state legislation. And then this is all happening now and people don't even know, right? And they don't even understand what this process is. But there are public hearings. I believe there's a preliminary vote happening tonight or preliminary hearing tonight. But we need to speak up and we need to do it as soon as possible. We need to weigh in now. We need to call on our elected officials to also speak up, and everyone else, all the stakeholders and people in the community, we want everyone to speak up and make their voices heard and put pressure on the rent guidelines board to do the right thing.
And do these boards have a term?
There are terms, but typically the mayor reappoints, and the mayor can decide if I think after the term ends, they can appoint someone new.
Okay. And in regards to the taxes, buildings that get tax breaks through any type of programs like the 421A or whatever, or J51, and they have more than 6 units, they are also, because they're not paying those property taxes, which would lower their expenses, do they still get to participate? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
If they're rent regulated units, then they would get these increases.
Oh, okay, thank you very much, Jason. As a matter of fact, Jason is correct. A meeting of the Rent Guidelines Board started about an hour ago, so it'll be on the 11 o'clock news. Candy?
Hi, yeah, okay, so I have a comment, but then also I'm gonna, whatever. And so the thing is about this is that definitely we know we cannot, no one can afford the increase. We've been hit hard. Everyone is going through hardship. This is not just someone, not just it's not just that we should not have sympathy or anything or any empathy or whatever it is, feelings towards someone who's a property owner and then just sell it and that's it, keep going away. It's not even about that. Everybody should actually get together between the landlords and the tenants, okay, and bring that same problem and put the pressure on the city, because you're talking about water tax, not just property tax. Water tax is unforgivable. Okay. And you have the common areas that need to be paid for. There's a lot of expenses. The problem here is that we cannot afford, of course, an increase at all when we're trying to figure out how to pay for health insurance, because that does not, in the application, does not give you no deductions at all. Okay, so we definitely need to have, the whole balance. It's a balance here. That's why justice is the same way, with a balance. Okay, and it has to work for everybody, because everybody, one is a provider and the other one is the one that's receiving. And the provider is the landlord, and the people that are receiving it is having an enjoyment, is a place to live, whether it's quality or not, which is other issues we got to tackle. But the main thing is that we have to really educate ourselves and everybody to really see the reality of where we have a problem. COVID, we're living right now post-COVID, and everyone has been hit hard in every level. Okay, so it's not like it's just, we need to definitely make sure we get a freeze, at least for this year, because that 3 to 5% to even 5% has been made it hard for everyone. You got people that are making $98 every 2 weeks because they're on public assistance. All right, nobody wants to talk about that, but there are in apartments, they can live anywhere. There's nowhere for them to live. So we definitely need to advocate more stronger, more harder, but how, what's the stance that Community Board 11 is going to take on this? Are we going to just have this conversation here in this committee, or are we going to have awareness and let everybody know, I know that we have from St. Agera, we have a representative there, Miriam, and I and some other non-for-profits. We're all neighborhood preservation organizations, right? And we do advocacy to make sure that our funding stays in place. Why? Because issues and situations like what's going on right now, how do we service the tenants, right? And so I'm not trying to take up everybody's place, but I'm just trying to bring in a point here. And the thing about it is that how we get to make sure that the governor and every elected official make sure that we stay on that budget, and that this program does not go away, because without this program, then that means it's going to be in elected officials' offices, everybody, and the resources. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that every organization has advocated in some way, somehow, discussing with elected officials, along with the city, and in government, and who is the agencies that we need to deal with, to make sure that we can come to a consensus in seeing our point of view. And it's something that we have to do. And it's been many years that this organization has not, the community board has not done an advocacy strongly with all of us united, talking about this rent guideline board, not to not, the increases to just be frozen at the moment. But we need to come to common ground with everybody. And this includes also the landlords, because you know what, just the same way they need that increase, some of them, because we got a lot of slumlords, but some of them are the ones that really can't even get by. And even if they want to sell their building, some people are not going to want to buy. It all just depends on the situation. And I'm not trying to attack no one, because everybody isn't, has the right to their opinion. But when you eat this every single day, you do this every single day, you see both sides of every story. And we all just need to come to a common ground where we can get the rent guideline board to say, hold it 1 minute, don't raise the rents. But at the same time, we need the city to say, okay, you need to give the landlords some type of incentive, especially the lower ones, not the multi-million-dollar ones. I'm not looking at them. But everybody that lives in there also have their own story. What could they afford? But how can we come to a consensus where they can be incentivized to help the landlords of, especially the affordability, the low income affordable housing developers, that are homeowners, providers, to give them some type of incentive, pay a portion or do a forgiveness on property tax, God forbid, but yes, think about that. You know what I mean? It's something to talk about. And it's they're doing the abatement right now with the water bill, but not everybody knows about that. Only certain news, you don't hear it all. If you don't hear that from the news, you wouldn't even know there was a deadline that just passed April 30th, for people to have that the water bill forgive abatement, and I was talking to a homeowner yesterday about that, and she didn't even know. And she just became a widow and inherited the building from her husband. And it's a lot of stuff that has been happening, and they don't have that where what to do and the resources. But if they come to organizations such as ourselves, of course, we're going to give them that information. Not everybody does the outreach. I'm not trying to, say ay bendito to everybody, but I'm just saying that COVID has made a big problem for everybody financially. And one of the things is, I know I cannot afford an extra increase in my rent, because it's like you say, you're supposed to be paying 30% of your income, not half of your paycheck goes towards your rent. And then you got to think about food, and other expenses that you have that are your responsibility to keep living. So I just want to know, are we going to take a stand? What are we going to do moving forward tonight, or even at a full board? What are we going to do about this? How we're going to be putting the awareness out to all the individuals that are renters in East Harlem, or even out anywhere, out citywide, about this whole rent guideline board, besides just the news? How do we educate our people to advocate for themselves and come downtown and at least go and either by writing a statement and stuff like that? Are we going to do something like that? Like, which direction is the housing committee going to do this, and then taking it to the full board? And I'm glad to see that our board chair is on board here tonight at attending this meeting, because I think it's something we can just, have a takeaway from here tonight. And that's just it. I'm not trying to badge anyone, so please don't misunderstand. I'm just voicing my opinion and coming out that we need a solution, and what stand or we're taking a position on this as far as the rent guideline board is concerned. Because you have a lot of young individuals that just got apartments, and they're starting their life in getting apartments and having good jobs to try and be part of the whole, self-independency living, like the way we just had a presentation from the Alice Forney. This is all going to tie into that. But at the same time, how do we, what are we doing? What are we going to do tonight? That's all.
Thank you, Candy. Raja, and then Xavier.
So I like what you said, Candy. You can't be ay bendito to everybody. So ay bendito first to the landlords. So the landlords, their arguments, they don't have enough money to make repairs. Then the residents are living in these shabby apartments, et cetera. What I think, when you look at the city as a whole, the landlords have a lot of people advocating for themselves. Most judges, when they're ruling on cases, they rule in favor of the landlords. We have to figure out who are we trying to protect? Is it the little kid that's growing up in a rent control apartment who will not be able to live there and go to school if they raise the rent? Are we following what many economists say the housing shortage is due to rent control and rent stabilization? We've got to take a stance. We can't sort of play every side. Having been on the short end of the stick with rent control as a kid, we needed it. And, everybody that I know growing up, we needed that break. Now, yes, there are people that abuse rent control. There are many empty homes that people can have a house in Jersey and they still got their rent control apartment that they're living in. Even politicians, Charlie Rangel had a couple of rent control apartments. He didn't need them. So there's a lot of different angles, and I do like the ay bendito to everybody, but who are we gonna represent as a board? And I think we got to represent, or at least I'd like to represent, the people who need that, you know, cheap apartment to be able to live, to be able to raise their family, for the little old lady, the little viejita that can't afford her rent. And so that's my side. I think there's enough to protect landlords, enough advocates like you see on this, the board appointed by the mayor. Yeah, they're going to help the landlords. And so I don't think we need to talk about how do we fix the problems and see both sides of the story. I think we got to protect the little guy as a community board. Thanks.
Thank you, Raja. Xavier?
Thank you, John, and everyone. Hold on just a second. I stepped out from the CCHP event here. Let me try to clip on my camera. I don't know if you can see me at all. Okay, I'm right here. We just had the grand opening of CCHP and their relocation. So I want to say that thank you, Jason, for bringing this to our attention. Historically, we have supported a kind of pumping of the brakes, if you will, when it comes to increases. And historically, because of the lack of rungs in the ladder, we have taken the position that we should not be seeking the highest increases and actually taking the more conservative approach, right? 0 to whatever the number is. Typically it was with inflation, but regardless of that, mathematically, we have been supportive of, with our statement of district needs and budget requests, to preserve affordable housing. And that is where I would recommend, but this committee has had a very robust discussion. I've been hearing some of it. We have to take an approach that will preserve people in their homes while we emerge from COVID. We're on the tail end. Apologies for the background noise. We're at the tail end of COVID. We have inflation that is at 8% at its highest, which means you go in to get a gallon of milk. That's astronomical for someone who's on a fixed income, whether you're a retiree or someone who's dealing with, dare I say, issues beyond their control. It's nonsensical that we would be anything other than supportive, but however, I've heard everyone's statements, and my recommendation is to consider where our previous positions were and where we would like to go. The number is one thing. When it comes to issues with the landlords, and again, that's not as addressed as readily. If there's the recommendation this committee would like to say when it comes to taxes, water, all that, that's a separate issue to address. You're addressing what was within the control of RGB. If you want to advocate for positions that deal with DP, Con Ed, et cetera, and so on, when it comes and it's related to rent-controlled buildings, that's something to be separate and apart. But again, I appreciate Jason bringing this to the committee. I apologize that there's so much background noise, which is a bit distracting. But I want to say thank you to all of you. Your passion, your advocacy has been heard. And I think as one of the many rungs in the ladder to affordability, whether it's NYCHA or rent stabilized apartments, this is something that we have historically been supportive, and I see no reason to deviate. And I thank you. I will have a AirPod in my ear as I step back in to continue this event. And I applaud all of you for the robust conversation. We need all of our committees to constantly do this, and you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Xavier. Okay, Ms. Mapp, the floor is yours. Ms. Mapp, if you're talking, you're still muted. Still muted if you're talking.
And John, could I make one more comment while we wait for Tamika Map?
Sure.
It would be easiest if whatever the position the committee wishes to plant the flag in, bullet point it, and that'll make it easier for us to write a letter. That's the only, whatever side you're going to be on for historical relevancy, just we would like to put this position in place because of X, Y, and Z. We have already staked that out previously. So I just want to say whatever position you go, that's just to make it easier on the staff. That's all.
Well, and also, Xavier, I'll be talking with you about that tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Mapp? Okay. She may be having difficulties. Ms. McFarland, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I was just saying that I know someone had brought up the 421A. That's expired. And so there's no subsidy coming from that either. You know, I wish Tamika Map would have been able to come on and speak to that because she gives workshops every other Sunday from 12 o'clock speaking about these rent guidelines and the resolutions that she has that she's want to put in for into legislation. So we have to really pay attention to this affects everyone. We had some residents that was in that home, co-op owners, seniors that was co-op owners, and because they was losing the 421A, they saw an increase of maybe about $500 or $600 on their maintenance. So that is if you spend your whole life savings to get and retired and get you a condo, and now these subsidies are going, where are our seniors going to go without these subsidies? Or same, and it's across the board, public housing, everything. And you know, it just seemed like our city is just funneling money into private developers. I never understand why this mayor is able to put public dollars into RAD and PAC, which are private developers. I don't understand instead of section line. So that's another horse of another color. But with that's our yield.
Well, listen, that's a conversation for another day. Believe me. Jason?
Okay, thank you. Is it okay? I don't know if the discussion has completed or if we can make a motion for the community board to write a letter to the rent guidelines board and copy our elected officials, basically demanding a rent freeze.
Okay. Well, Jason, are you making this motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter to the rent guidelines board and CC our elected officials demanding a rent freeze.
Okay. Do I have someone second that motion?
Candy has her hand up.
Yeah, I see it, Candy. Are you
seconding it?
Seconding this?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's seconded. Jason, who made the motion to write a letter to the rent guidelines board and to CC to elected officials to request a rent freeze for rent subsidized apartments for this year. And Candy Vivas Vasquez seconded. Okay, so if you will, Marlene, would you call the roll to see if this motion passes?
Okay, no problem. But I just want to be clear of this motion, and then I have another question. So write a letter to the rent guidelines board demanding a rent freeze on rent stabilized apartments in opposition to 16%. I just need I need it clear.
That's correct.
Okay, so rent stabilized.
to be specific, that 16% increases are on 2-year leases. So that may be
Okay,
that
Jason made the
that
motion. I'm sorry, John. Jason, is that what your motion, is that what you wanted to say? Write a letter to the rent, RBG demanding a rent freeze on rent stabilized apartments? Yes?
Yes, yes. I don't know that we need to specify what the proposed increases are, but depending on the vote tonight, we can certainly cite to that as for background.
Okay, so okay, no problem. So you just wanted to say write letter to RBG demanding a rent freeze, and you just want to stop there.
Right. And then Xavier and John and whoever's writing the letter, they can fill in the blanks of background information.
Okay, so my next question to you all is, you guys, the board office doesn't have a problem helping you write letters, but someone should really draft this one because it's your position. And it shouldn't have the board office's language in there. And so if someone could give me a bare bones letter before the full board, and we can be more than happy to help you do that, but I need a draft.
Okay, well, Marlene, like I said to Xavier, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, and we're going to get together and draft a letter.
No problem. Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that before I go into the roll call.
Absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes, Beverly.
In regards to the draft that you're going to be talking about tomorrow, how would we as a committee member put our little 2 cents in it as to what else to ask for within this draft? Do we send it to you, or wait till you have the draft and then we work on?
Well, the thing is, you can contact me, and we'll if we, what we can do is that if it's something that can be put in the draft or be put in the letter, we'll put it in, and then we'll ask for assistance from the board office.
Thank you.
Okay, Candy.
I know we still have the motion on the floor. I know we have the motion on the floor, but I just want to say that I second it so like that we can have, the letter sent to the rent guidelines board. It should be also addressed to all the elected officials. But before you send that out and everything like that, can you kick it around and send it to the committee members so we can see your draft, what it looks like, that we are supporting this letter of motion? Because I don't want to find myself and everybody then gets upset or something because at the full board, there's some type of different language opposed to what we agreed on. I don't want to find myself then abstaining or something, being upset about the fact that that was not exactly everything that was worded. So, to all due respect to all the committee members that are here, giving up their time, that we can at least see what the draft looks like once you and Xavier and, John, Chair, and Xavier and Jason crafted, that if we could just get a little draft look at what it looks like before the full board. If that's, that's just what I would like to just say. But the motion, I'm still in support of the whole motion.
I think that's possible. Marlene.
Yeah, so Candy, to your point, and Jason mentioned that before he made the motion, these letters do go out to the elected officials that cover the district. Absolutely. So it will go out. They're CC'd in the letter, and it does go out. Every single letter you all write.
No, I know.
Yeah, so
I do see that, Marlene, but what I'm trying to say is address it to them to support us on that stand. Like, where do they stand on this? Are they with the whole rent guideline board as well? Or are they with us in the community in supporting this motion? That's why I would like to let them know to support us as well, not just giving them the letter so they can read it and see that this is where we're standing. If you understand what I mean. I'm not saying to make a war out of this. It's not to make a war out of this, but it's to make it a team working in the voice of the people of the community, the public, That's
Right.
what it's
So
about.
you're saying that you wanted, just to be clear, Candy, you're saying that you wanted to be in the body of the letter addressed to the electeds, not just the CC part.
Yes.
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 And if that's a friendly amendment, I accept it. We can call
Thank
on our
you.
elected officials to join us in demanding a rent freeze.
That's right, because without their support, it'll go through. And we've seen this over and over and over and over. And then we're mute. Okay. So we need to, this is how you're going to rally the people to also help and support us. But we need the support of our elected officials, that represent our community to really, be at that room with the rent guideline board and support us on this. That's all.
Okay, so I'll just revisit this motion, okay, since Jason accepted the amendment. So you're saying write a letter to RBG demanding a rent freeze, and how are you including the electeds? Just give me that sentence, please.
If you're sending the letter to the elected officials, it's just letting them know that we would like for them to stand, along with us on this decision.
Okay, I understand. But are you putting that in the motion language?
I think so the first paragraph is
You're drafting it, right?
No.
Right.
The motion
Jason,
language right now, are
I'm
you
letting
putting the electeds in that sentence right now? Or no?
I think the second
Give me all
sentence or
those
second
papers.
paragraph can say,
Give me all those
we also
papers.
call upon, sorry, I don't mean to cut the line.
No, go ahead. You got the floor. I muted myself, so I don't know who's talking.
So I think the first sentence or first couple of sentences is saying that, we demand, to the rent guidelines board, we, community board 11, et cetera, are demanding a rent freeze for rent stabilized apartments in New York City, whatever background information. And then either the second paragraph can say, we also call upon our elected officials to join us in calling upon a rent freeze for rent stabilized apartments.
Right. I understand that, Jason.
Right.
I'm sorry to cut you off. You're like, I understand, like, you're giving the bare bones of what the letter would say. I'm saying for your sentence right now that you said for the motion, Candy made a friendly amendment, you accepted that. So in addition to what is existing in your motion, write letter to RBG depending on a rent freeze, right? So write letter to RBG demanding,
yes.
Demanding a rent freeze. And you added something about elected officials. All I'm saying is revise that sentence for me so it is your motion and it's not coming from me.
So the motion is for community board 11 to write a letter to rent guidelines board demanding a rent freeze for rent stabilized apartments in New York City, and also calling upon our elected officials to join us in demanding a rent freeze.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Okay. Beverly, yes.
Is there a deadline for this? If it is, what is the deadline?
I'm half kidding, but it's yesterday. But
okay.
Because the thing is, because the thing is usually the rent guidelines board usually hands down their decisions around June 15th. So the thing is, so today is May 2nd. So we got about a month. And the thing is that I would like to get this out within the next week or so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if that's the case, if the motion is in line and everybody's happy with it, Marlene, take attendance and see if the motion passes.
Okay, no problem. Diane, Raja Flores.
Yes.
Thank you. Brandon isn't here, right? I'm just making sure I'm not going to miss anyone. If anyone joined the meeting late, please just let me know. And so I'll call your name into the vote. John Green.
Aye.
Beverly Pabon.
Yes.
Thank you. Claudia Perez. Claudia Perez.
Okay.
Dawn Sanders.
Yes. I'm sorry. I had trouble with my mic.
No problem. Thank you. Dawn
Can
Sanders.
you just restate, because I dropped off for a minute, with the motion is, please? Hello?
Jason, go ahead and restate your motion for Dawn, please.
Sorry, just unmuting. Community Board 11 to write letter to Rent Guidelines Board demanding rent freeze on rent stabilized apartments in New York City and calling elected officials to join us in demanding rent freeze.
Yes. Did you get it? Yes?
I got it. Thank you. Anne Marie Vasquez. Candy Vivas Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Candy saying yes.
Thank you. Anne Marie, was that a yes for you?
I believe it was. Anne Marie?
I heard a delayed yes. I know Candy's voice. I just want to ensure that that was Anne Marie. I'm not too familiar with her voice yet.
Anne Marie, did you vote for this motion? For this motion?
Okay, we'll move on. Jason Wu.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you very much, Marlene.
You're welcome.
Okay, now that we've completed that, let's see, we can go to old business. Any old business? I see hands. Okay, is there any new business? Now someone asked a question at the beginning of this meeting, and I forgot the name of the person. So are they still here?
I think it was Beverly McFadden.
No.
McLeod, no?
No, it wasn't her. I would remember her voice. It's a voice I was familiar with.
Sabrina Lamb.
Matt? That could be it. Miss Matt? If you're
hi,
talking,
thank you so much. Okay, it's me. Thank you so much, Chair. I put a link in the chat. I wrote a resolution for fair tax for co-ops and condos. You know that the our tax abatements has expired, so we're trying to come up with creative solutions on trying to figure out how we can get some tax relief for our affordable co-ops and condos. And I was hoping to be able to speak and do a presentation. I sent the presentation thing to Angel. So I want to know if I can get on the next housing committee to actually do a whole presentation on the resolution to be able to help our co-op and condo owners in the in community board level.
Oh, I shouldn't see any problem with that. Our next meeting, I believe, is June 7th.
Okay, that would be perfect. Thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, because it's usually the first Tuesday of the month. So I believe the first Tuesday in June is June 7th.
Okay.
Hi, John. I have my hand raised. I didn't want to interrupt anyone.
Sure, Marlene, go ahead.
No problem. Tamika, can you do me a favor? I will send you an email. I'm pretty sure I have your email address. I just need you to send in and complete and email me a presentation request form. I'll send that to you via email, okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Marlene.
No problem.
Okay, okay, Marlene. Miss Lamb?
Thank you, Chair John Green, for allowing me to speak. And I really was listening to everyone and everyone's experiences. I don't think that enough New Yorkers appreciate the housing tsunami that's currently happening. I'm also watching the live stream of the board. They're offering their preliminary vote tonight. So I'm wondering what and the housing tsunami not only addresses or the experiences of those who are renters, but those in NYCHA, as well as those who are low to moderate income co-op owners who are not rich by any means. And so, it's the entire state. And as myself and others have met with elected officials, they required an education. So I'm wondering, in terms of what is this, CB11's housing committee stance on, I understand what in terms of the letter that's going out to the board, but they're voting tonight. And have you appealed to them prior to tonight? And the elected officials in this district, do they know, your experiences, your rage? Because in the meetings that I've had, only one has said, I'm very much aware of this. I support this. We're going to find a solution on it. Tamika Mapp has done an amazing job in creating the language, because it's not just one particular person in terms of their particular housing. It's reflecting on a variety of us, and it's New York State. And I'm also wondering, have you appealed to the mayor, the assembly member, Gibbs, all of them? Because the letter that you're drafting now, as the preliminary vote is happening now, and the people are on stage surrounding the RGB board, have they heard your voices prior to now? And by the way, June 27th, there's going to be a tsunami in terms of elections. 51 new city council members will be voted on. Have they heard from this board?
Well, the thing is that, well, we're in a sense of transition. We have to basically, I have to ask Marlene. Marlene, the district covers like 4 different city council districts. Is that correct?
Well, Mr. Green, I think you're right. I also would say that as CB11 housing committee members, you represent a diverse housing stock, and we're all in it together. And I pray that your advocacy to these elected officials that we hire to represent us know about everything. So it's not just one letter that's being drafted, it's about all the different varieties, because I fear that if we don't hold their feet to the fire, that in 1 to 2, 3 years, this whole district will be transformed. So everyone that's concerned about gentrification, it's happening as I speak, and I'm not being hysterical about it. And someone said earlier that, a lot of people don't know about it, and that's true, because the news will not inform you about these very real issues. The mother of 4 or whomever can't afford the rent increase, the high eviction rates, the high property taxes.
That's true. I mean, the thing is that, and also you have a diverse number of people that have different tenets on this committee. I'm a NYCHA resident. There are people who live in market rate apartments, and the thing is that everybody is suffering, because the thing is that prices have gone up, salaries have not. And the thing, and you're right. The thing is that there are people in this city, and as well as this country, who have to decide between paying rent and eating.
That's right.
And it shouldn't be that way.
And Beverly was in, I think she's here tonight, but she enlightened me about the NYCHA buildings that are going to be destroyed in Chelsea. So I welcome, when I attend these meetings, that the conversation is now about one particular housing experience, but the variety of housing experiences that are all experiencing all the tsunami of it all, and the crisis of it all, and how this board has lit up the phones to these elected officials who are going to be grinning in your face in about 4 weeks.
Okay, bring in my
So wanting your vote, wanting your vote.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. But the thing is that we do try to advocate as much as we can for all residents in the, no matter what their housing situation is, because there are neighbors.
That's right. Well, I support when you get a chance, board members, if you would kindly read Tamika Mapp's resolution, and I support the language of that resolution and welcome your support of it as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lamb. We will read it.
Thank you.
I will read it at least.
Great.
Thank you, ma'am. Jason, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say that I think we all agree with the prior speaker. I think it's a serious problem. I think we all need to speak up. I think we need to put pressure on our elected officials. And I did raise this at the last full board meeting when the electeds and their staffers were present. And honestly, some of them said that they weren't familiar with the issue, or they thought that it was a bill, and it's not a bill, right? And so I think we do need to educate our elected officials, or at least their staffers. And to the extent that the electeds do understand, the fact that their staff don't suggests to me that it's not on their radar. And so we need to make sure it is, and that they're with us in fighting for the affordability. So thank you.
Okay, I agree with Jason. And on the other side, the thing is that it's a thing where some residents of this community have to know their rights as well. And the thing is that that is a big task in itself, and that's something that hopefully we can be a part of. But Beverly?
Yes, I was our neighbors were speaking. Just like I think we should actively get into the habit on a yearly basis to pick a month, because the rent guideline goes through this every year. So not to try to catch up when it comes up during the months that they start these deliberations, but that we make a conscious decision to have this conversation and start getting support earlier in the year. Maybe pick a month of late December or whatever, because the rent guideline boards doesn't go into effect until October. Maybe by December or December to February, we start bringing up this issue and talking about what could happen for the next year that the rent guideline board meet, and start advocating for freezes or whatever type of percentage that we think it could go up. Because it's like we've been speaking, this happens every year. And me, myself, I'm, only because I'm have been on the board for the last 2 years, I never knew about these type of conversations until it's posted on the news. And within a couple of weeks, they already made their decision. So maybe as a community board, we can advocate for these type of discussions way before the rent guideline boards come into them making this decision. So they'll have our input way before that.
Okay, Beverly, I'm so glad you said that, because the thing is that it's true. There's something that we should look out for in advance, and not be trying to beat the clock with things like this. But also what I was going to say after this, we should also consider this with our district needs, because the thing is that yes. I'm going to say keep this actually to keep this in mind. The consider meeting about district needs sometimes during the summer, because the thing is, it's hard to get all of our requests in a month and a half. So because when we come back in September, our requests are due in November, and that's cutting it close. So keep that in mind, folks. Dawn, if you're talking, you're still muted. Okay. Okay, it sounded like she looked like she dropped. We lost her. Okay. Well, since there are no other hands raised, I believe we can end this. Okay. The thing is that the next excuse me, the next housing committee meeting will be on Tuesday, June 7th at 6:30 p.m. Depending on what happens, it'll either be virtual or in person. So and if Marlene, if you please call the roll. So, oh, excuse me, one second. Candy?
Yeah, can I just have one last comment? Yeah, because when we call for the state to make sure budgets don't get cut off that will affect our community, I'm so happy to find out today that it's been successful, that the budgets are not being cut off. Instead, there's going to be increases, towards housing and services to be provided for families and individuals. We can do the same thing on a city level, and we can also call each of us individually as members of the board, but also speak to people and explain to them. Outreach is very important. Everyone is taken for granted that everyone has a computer. You got to go online and see the website, and you have to still go old school. Everyone needs a piece of paper in their hands, something that they can see visually and read it or see it and say, hey, call your elected officials. Let them know how you feel about the rent being raised. Individuals, when you speak to the people, as well as ourselves, pick up the phone. We'll get along with our elected officials. And if we don't, we all still have to work together. We got something in common, and it's called public service. So we have to, I'm not demanding for you to do it, but we're here for a reason. So it's just to pick up the phone and call our elected officials, even till their ears bleed. And I'm not saying to do it in a malicious way, but for them to understand that to just hear our voices. And if they stand with us, then that's a great thing. But let them see the volume of people that are actually coming into the consensus of calling their office. Call your elected officials. Let them know that the rent guideline board, you cannot afford additional increase in your rent. When they see that impacts them like that, because you got to put it in layman language, I'm sure we're going to have a good outcome.
Okay, the RGB vote is in.
Thank you.
The preliminary vote is in. 1 year, 2 to 5% increase. 2 years, 4 to 7% increase. The final increase will be voted on June 21.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. And thank you, Candy. Okay, so Marlene, if you will, you can call the roll, please.
You have Chowdhury. Diane Collier is excused. Roger Flores.
Here.
Brandon Gillespie. John Green.
Here.
Alonzo Johnson. Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Claudia Perez.
Present.
Dawn Sanders. Anne Marie Vasquez. Candy Vives Vasquez.
Present.
And Jason Wu.
Present, and thank you to our board.
Thank you, Jason. And I call the meeting is adjourned at 8:45 p.m. Everybody have a good night, and
night.
I'll be in touch with you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.